What would have happened if all the men died? Hey! In Justice League Season 1, the two-parter episode Fury, a girl named Arisha has a plan to kill all the men in the world using magical germ warfare. She creates a toxin that spreads quickly, only attacks men, and takes effect almost immediately after contact. Now, of course, her plan is foiled in the end, but what would have happened if it wasn't? How the toxin affected men. There are two ways it could have attacked, either by attacking anything with high levels of testosterone or by attacking the Y gene. The testosterone can get thrown out the window immediately because that would also affect any woman who's worked out recently. The female firefighters would be affected, and so would Arisha herself, as testosterone is used for muscle growth and is produced by every animal, male and female. The effect that you see also leads to the idea that it's attacking the cells themselves. If it's designed to attack human males specifically, then humanity would die, but nature would survive. But you see it attacking non-humans as well. At the rate it would have spread, all men would be dead within weeks, if not days. A cure can only be created if you can isolate the toxin and have time to disperse it to the population. Isolating men who haven't been exposed to specialized containment units might prevent mass extinction. The cure will have to be created quickly in either case. How long it's viable is also going to determine how quickly and if everyone will die. If it's designed to attack the Y gene, then all life is doomed. The first things wiped out would be hermaphrodites, any animal with both sexes, like worms, snails, and leeches. The second animals would be those that can switch their sex when the other is missing. Some kinds of frogs and fish do this. The most well-known are clownfish. The toxin kills off all the males, so a female becomes a male, but the toxin kills that one off too. This process continues until there is only one female clownfish left. Then she dies, and her kind go extinct. The third to die would be animals like ferrets, where the females will die if they don't get mated with. Their own reproductive cycle is deadly to them. And the more you learn about ferrets, the more questions you have. The next to die would be most bugs. All of the males die immediately. The females live for however long their lifespan is, but lay no eggs, ending the cycle. Bees and ants have the males mate with the queen so she can lay eggs. If she lays unfertilized eggs, they hatch as males and die immediately. When the queen dies, the new queen will be unable to make more workers, ending the cycle. Their number will dwindle even faster when you realize that the other animals are eating them while they can no longer replace themselves. The next would be any non-domesticated animal. Those animals would still be hunted until the day of old age or from disease. Cloning wouldn't be seen as a viable option, as it would take up necessary resources for sustaining the human population. Domesticated animals would fall under either food or pets. Unless you're super rich, the only way your dog is having puppies is if you pay for the cloning process. Most cloning facilities would be focused on either growing food animals or humans. Birds and lizards might survive or be affected differently. They have W and Z sex genes instead of X and Y. Females have a WZ pairing, while males have a ZZ pairing. Ironically, if it does kill one of them off, it'll be the females. If anything, it'll be starvation and disease that will get most of them in the end. Frogs have 6 different sex chromosomes, so no idea how that would play out. The animals that have survived the longest will be a few starfish that have the ability to make little clones of themselves, until disease wipes them out. With plants, the first ones to die would be mushrooms, as they all contain the Y gene. The next to go would be any annual plants. Flowering plants would die off in cold weather and need seeds. The pollen carrying the male gene of every plant would become non-viable, preventing the formation of male plants, making the first generation after exposure all female. The second generation would never come. The only food plants that would work long-term would be things like potatoes, ginger, and turmeric, root veggies that don't require seeds. Things like carrots and onions won't, because you plant those, you plant the top of a carrot, it's going to grow into a carrot plant in order to produce seeds, and then then those seeds will grow into a carrot. So that's not going to work. Same with onions. Some grasses and herbs will survive because they spread via root system. Mint, clovers, and kudzu are great examples. Both of these groups are actually in the same family, so perennial bushes like roses would also survive but be unable to seed. Some breeds of figs and persimmon could bear fruit without pollination, but that would only last 25 years at the most. Trees will keep growing and growing until something makes them stop. Fires, natural disasters, and diseases would kill them off because there would be no seeds to replace them.
Not plants, but they do need mentioning. Bacteria and viruses would last the longest as they don't have sex genes. They just split in half and hack the DNA of the host, them dying out when the environment becomes uninhabitable. Our best guess, Earth would be a dead world after a few hundred years.
How the toxin affects women slash society. Because it wouldn't kill women outright, most of them would live pretty long lives. It's the psychological effects that would cause devastation. Imagine this. You're in a hospital about to give birth to a boy. Your husband is next to you, letting you crush his fingers, and a male doctor is helping you deliver. Suddenly, they both get gross sick and collapse to the floor, dying. Due to your son's poor immune system, his first breath is also his last. There's screaming and chaos in the halls as men are dropping like flies. The news lady on the TV in the room over says something about men dying all over the world. Weddings become nightmares, streets become graves, and homes become desolate. It would attack both innocent and guilty alike. The only women who would celebrate would be those that blame all men for all problems, which is a much smaller number of women at the time than most people think. It's still a much smaller number than most people think, but the news likes to hype everything up. Internet and news and whatnot. Once everyone knows who made the toxin that killed all the men, most women would want Orisha dead. With the toxin floating in their systems, anyone carrying a boy would miscarry, which leads to more problems. Only a handful of women would have the skills to attempt to make a cure to save humanity from extinction. Sperm banks would be a saving grace because the sperm is frozen in a sterilized, airtight environment, but only if the cure is made before the youngest generation becomes 30, where fertility begins to drop. Another option is any man who is unfortunate enough to be immortal, Vandal Savage, leaving him in poor condition. Thanks to a few animal sperm banks, they would be able to keep some species alive longer, but it would be mostly pets, farm animals, and a few wild animals. Building up the animal populations would take longer due to how little animal sperm banks there are. Dogs and cats would quickly become nuggets and steaks until the banks ran out. Cloning would be a very expensive option that would not work past a few generations due to genetic destabilization in available facilities, Cadmus being the biggest provider, and even their clones are unstable. Making sperm from bone marrow wouldn't work because you still need to get the stem cells necessary to make it from a male, all of whom would be long dead. This process is also highly experimental and isn't even viable as of 2020, making it a non-option. After a while, the grief would subside and women would have to learn how to maintain their current level of society. Because of the sudden job vacuums, a lot of women would be forced to work even if they need to stay home to care for their daughters. There would also be a shortage of skills and political infrastructure. This would lead to anarchy and shortages. Male-dominated jobs, like most blue-collar jobs, would have to be filled by women who have those specific skill sets, of which there are very few. Entire industries would grind to a halt as there would not be enough people to keep them running. There's also the fact that women are proportionally weaker than men, making some jobs nearly impossible to do. Like the dangerously important water treatment plants. If that goes, a lot of women will quickly die from drinking literal sewage water in the big cities. So there'll be a lot of corpses. Tests have proven that women have a harder time working together for survival than men do, even if they have an expert among them. Go watch any survival show with men versus women. The emotional toll of all of these events would send a majority of the population in depression or other negative psychological states that would have to go untreated, leading to a high suicide rate. The only upside to all this is the fact that there would be significantly fewer wars because the majority of the paramilitaries are male and the devastation would make war pointless. Also, income would be higher as there's less competition if money still means anything, and housing would be cheaper and more widely available. More housing will be available as each generation dies off. Overall, not a good trade-off.
How would this affect the Amazons? Considering their isolationist policies, they wouldn't even know until someone came to tell them or if nature starts dying around them. With the way they view men, they would feel that Orisha is somewhat justified in her actions, if not a bit extreme. Because of the island, the Amazons are basically immortal and disconnected from reality. They would try to convince the rest of the world that they have no problems because you have no problems because the men aren't around to create them. Yeah, some women would side with them, but everyone else would blame them for the deaths of their sons, their brothers, their uncles, their cousins, their fathers, and their husbands. The Amazons wouldn't realize the true extent of men's influence or necessity until they had to cover for all of the jobs that normal women can't do. They would be pushed to their limits as all non-Amazon women start dying around them with no daughters to replace them. After a while, they themselves would be facing extinction as the world dies around them. Any attempt to leave Earth would spread the toxin to other worlds where the results would vary greatly.
Why did Orisha do it?
Rebirth. You see, Orisha was not born in Amazon. She comes from man's world. When she was but a child, her homeland became the battlefield for a bloody and senseless war. The victors were cruel, and denied even the basic humanity of their defeated foes. Soon neighbors, friends, and schoolmates were all gone. Her family had no choice but to flee. They eventually made their way to a refugee ship. But even here, fate was not kind. Pirates raided the ship and stole their few meager possessions. Orisha survived, clinging to a piece of floating wreckage. Miraculously, she washed ashore here, on Themyscira. I found her and nursed her back to health. Then we Amazons adopted her, trained her, and magically endowed her with Amazon strength. I've often wondered if we did the right thing.
Orisha was ripped from a war-torn home, attacked by pirates, and taught that all men are the enemy by a bunch of women who were disconnected from reality. Even after she was told the truth that she would be dead if not for a man, she still wanted to go through with her execution plan. The society she was raised in was one that hated men.
You fools! Don't you see? We're not your enemy, it's the men! They must be destroyed!
You're wrong, Orisha. Without men, you wouldn't still be here. After your ship sank, you must have lost consciousness as you drifted on your makeshift raft. You would surely have drowned had the ship's captain not found you and pulled you to safety. Valiantly, he struggled to keep you alive, until he brought you to the shores of Themyscira. But the effort was too much for his heart. His final resting place is a simple, unmarked grave. He's the only man ever buried on Themyscira. So you see, for all your hatred of men, It turns out you owe your life to one.
Why didn't you ever tell me about this?
I didn't think it was important. I didn't think he was important.
Maybe it's time to reconsider that.
So everything you ever preached was a lie.
Not everything.
Still, the acts of one man cannot redeem the sins of his kind. They all must pay.
When you're raised to hate people, no matter the group, everyone will suffer from your mentality. What makes this episode scary is that a lot of women online are now agreeing with Orisha. This episode is a warning to men and women alike. If our society continues to teach that men are evil incarnate, then we will all go extinct. And that's what we have. Bye!
Comment below if you know a show where some guy tries wiping out all of the women. It would help make a follow-up video. Like, subscribe, and click the bell. Bye!